The CEO slammed her fist on the conference table so hard the coffee cups rattled. "If you're such a genius, then fix it," she screamed, pointing at the man in the faded security uniform like he was garbage. 31 engineers watched. Some smirked. Some laughed out loud. But 43 seconds later, every single one of them went dead silent. Because the man they just humiliated, the night shift security guard making $12 an hour, had just saved their $200 million company from total collapse. And nobody in that room knew the real reason his hands were shaking. Nobody knew about the hospital bed waiting for him. Nobody knew he was whispering to himself, "I can't lose this job. My boy needs me." Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. Marcus Webb had learned a long time ago that invisible men don't get to complain. They clock in, they clock out. They say yes sir and no ma'am, and they keep their mouths shut even when their pride is bleeding on the floor. That's just how it works when you're 54 years old, when your knees ache from standing 8 hours straight, when your resume has gaps the size of canyons, and when the only thing keeping your son alive costs more than you'll ever make in a lifetime. So Marcus kept his head down. He'd been working the night security shift at Nexus Digital for 11 months. 11 months of checking badges, nodding politely, watching 20-something engineers in expensive sneakers walk past him like he was furniture. 11 months of hearing them talk about stock options and Tesla upgrades while he calculated whether he could afford both his son's medication and the electric bill this month. He never said a word. Not when they left trash on the floor right in front of him. Not when they made jokes about the old guy at the door. Not when one of them, some kid barely out of college, asked him to hold his smoothie while he fumbled for his badge, then walked off without even saying thank you. Marcus just smiled, nodded, cleaned up the mess, because invisible men don't get to complain. But tonight was different. Marcus felt it the moment he walked through the doors at 10 p.m. The energy was wrong. People were running. Actual running in a building where everyone usually moved like they were too important to hurry. He saw Jennifer Chen, the head of IT security, sprint past him with her laptop clutched to her chest like it was a wounded child. "Jennifer," he called out. "Everything okay?" She didn't even look at him, just kept running toward the elevator. Marcus watched her disappear. Then he heard the voices. Loud, panicked, coming from the 4th floor. He wasn't supposed to go up there. Night security stayed on the ground floor. That was the rule. But something in his gut, that old instinct from a different life, told him to move. He took the stairs. Faster than his knees wanted him to. By the time he reached the 4th floor, his heart was pounding. And then, he saw it. Through the glass walls of the main operations center, he saw chaos. 30, maybe 40 people. Engineers, managers, executives. All of them staring at screens filled with red alerts, red warnings, red numbers counting down something that looked very, very bad. Marcus pressed his badge against the door. It beeped. Access denied. Of course, he didn't have clearance for this floor, so he just stood there, watching through the glass like a kid outside a candy store. And that's when he saw her. Victoria Sinclair, the CEO of Nexus Digital. She was standing in the center of the room, and even from 20 feet away, Marcus could feel her fury radiating like heat from a furnace. Victoria Sinclair had built Nexus Digital from nothing. 22 years ago, she'd started with 3 employees, a rented office above a Chinese restaurant, and a vision that everyone said was crazy. Now she commanded a fintech empire worth $2 billion. She'd been on the cover of Forbes twice. She'd testified before Congress. She'd fired executives who made her look bad and promoted interns who impressed her. She was brilliant. She was ruthless. And right now, she was terrified. But Victoria Sinclair never showed fear. She showed anger instead. "Someone explain to me," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade, "how a company with a $40 million security infrastructure is currently being robbed in real time." Nobody answered. Anyone. Derek Morrison, the chief technology officer, stepped forward. He was sweating through his designer shirt. Victoria, we're working on it. The attack vector it's sophisticated. We've never seen anything like. I don't want excuses, Derek. I want solutions. How much have we lost? Derek looked at his tablet. His hand was trembling. As of right now, 18 million. But the rate is accelerating. We're looking at potentially 200 million within the hour if we can't stop the breach. Victoria's face didn't change, but something behind her eyes shifted. 200 million, she repeated quietly. $200 million. We've got our best people on it, Derek said quickly. Chen Rodriguez Patterson, everyone's here. We're running every diagnostic, every countermeasure. And yet the money keeps disappearing, Victoria said. Interesting approach, Derek. Very innovative. Let me ask you something. She stepped closer to him. Close enough that everyone in the room could see Derek shrink. What exactly am I paying you $400,000 a year for? Derek opened his mouth. Nothing came out. That's what I thought. Victoria turned to face the room. Listen to me very carefully. I want this breach contained in the next 30 minutes. I don't care if you have to call God himself. I don't care if you have to sacrifice your firstborn. You will fix this or every single one of you will be unemployed by morning. Am I clear? Heads nodded. People scattered. Keyboards clattered. And Marcus Webb watched it all through the glass. He should have left. That's what the smart move was. Go back downstairs, pretend he never saw anything. Clock out at 6 a.m. and go home to check on Daniel. But Marcus couldn't move, because he recognized something on those screens, something that made his blood run cold. He'd seen that attack pattern before. Not here, not at Nexus Digital, but years ago in another life when he was a different man with a different name badge and a different future. The cascade failure. The specific way the breach was spreading through the network nodes. The timing of the intrusion packets. It was a Hydra attack. Modified, evolved, but unmistakable. And Marcus knew he knew with absolute certainty that the engineers in that room were fighting the wrong battle. They were trying to plug holes in a sinking ship, while the real flood was coming from somewhere they hadn't even thought to look. He pressed his palm against the glass. Walk away, he told himself. This isn't your fight anymore. But then he thought about Daniel. 9 years old. Bald from the chemo. Asking every night when Daddy was coming home. If Nexus Digital went down, if this attack succeeded, the company wouldn't just lose money. They'd lose clients. They'd lose trust. They'd lose everything. And then they'd start cutting costs. Laying people off. And who gets cut first? The night security guard making $12 an hour. Marcus took a breath. Then he started banging on the glass. Jennifer Chen was the first one to notice him. She looked up from her screen annoyed and saw the security guard waving at her through the glass like a madman. What the hell? She muttered. She walked over and cracked the door open. Sir, you can't be up here. This area is restricted. I know, Marcus said. I know, but listen, I think I can help. Jennifer stared at him like he'd just announced he was from Mars. Excuse me. The attack you're dealing with. I've seen it before. I know how it works. If you just let me, sir. Jennifer held up her hand. I appreciate whatever this is, but we have actual engineers working on this. Trained professionals. I'm sure you mean well, but this isn't really your area of expertise. She said those last 3 words slowly, like she was explaining something to a child. I understand how this looks, Marcus said, but I'm telling you, you're fighting the wrong fire. The breach you're seeing isn't the real attack, it's a distraction. The actual extraction is happening through your backup authentication servers. Ports 80i80 and 8443. Check them, please. Jennifer's eyes narrowed. How do you know about our backup authentication servers? Because I've been watching your network traffic for 11 months, every night, from the security desk, and I've seen anomalies on those ports 3 times in the past 2 weeks. I reported it to your department. Twice. Nobody responded. Jennifer opened her mouth, closed it. Behind her, someone shouted, "We just lost another 6 million." Jennifer turned to look at the chaos, then back at Marcus. "Wait here," she said. She shut the door in his face. Marcus waited. He watched through the glass as Jennifer walked over to Derek Morrison and said something in his ear. Derek looked over at Marcus. His expression shifted from confused to incredulous to annoyed in about 3 seconds. Then Derek laughed. He actually laughed. Marcus felt something twist in his chest, something old and familiar. Shame. Derek walked over to the door and opened it. "Okay, buddy," he said. "I don't know what kind of movie you think you're in right now, but we've got an actual crisis happening. Real engineers are handling it. Why don't you go back downstairs and check ports 8080 and 8443, Marcus said quietly. "Just check them. If I'm wrong, you've lost 30 seconds. If I'm right, I just saved your company." Derek smirked. "Listen, pal. I've been doing this for 15 years. I've got a master's degree from MIT and certifications in the Hydra framework," Marcus interrupted. "Version 3.2 modified with a polymorphic wrapper. That's what's hitting you. The flashy breach you're seeing is just theater. The real extraction is quiet, methodical, and it's happening right now while you're standing here telling me about your degree." Derek's smirk faltered. "How do you know about Hydra?" "Because I helped write the first countermeasure for it, in 2009, before you graduated." Silence. Derek stared at Marcus like he was seeing him for the first time. "Who the hell are you?" Before Marcus could answer, a voice cut through the air like a whip. "Derek!" Victoria Sinclair was walking toward them. Her heels clicked against the floor with the rhythm of a countdown timer. "Why are you chatting with the security guard while my company burns?" Derek stammered. "Victoria, this man claims he knows something about the attack." "Does he?" Victoria stopped in front of Marcus. She looked him up and down, the faded uniform, the worn shoes, the gray in his hair. "And what exactly does a security guard know about cybersecurity?" Marcus met her eyes. He didn't look away. "Ma'am, I know this looks..." "It looks," Victoria interrupted, "like a man who empties trash cans thinks he can do what 30 engineers with combined salaries of $4 million cannot. Is that about right?" A few people nearby snickered. Marcus felt his face burn, but he didn't look away. "I'm asking for 30 seconds, he said. "That's all. Just have someone check the backup authentication servers, ports 8080 and 8443. If I'm wrong, you can fire me right now, but if I'm right..." He didn't finish the sentence. Victoria stared at him. Her eyes were like ice. "You know what I think," she said. "I think you watch too much television. I think you have some fantasy about being the hero who saves the day. But this is the real world. And in the real world, people like you don't solve problems like this. People like you mop floors. That's your contribution. That's your lane." She leaned closer. "So I suggest you get back in it." Marcus felt 30 years of silence pressing against his throat. 30 years of yes ma'am and no sir, and swallowing his pride because that's what invisible men do. But then he thought about Daniel. Daniel lying in that hospital bed asking when Daddy was coming home. Daniel, who still believed his father could do anything. And something inside Marcus shifted. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "with all due respect, you're about to lose $200 million because everyone in this room is too proud to listen to the one person who actually knows what's happening. Now you can stand there and insult me for another 5 minutes, or you can let me sit down at one of those terminals and prove you wrong." The room went dead quiet. Nobody talked to Victoria Sinclair like that. Nobody. Her face hardened into something dangerous. "Fine," she said. "You want to embarrass yourself? Be my guest." She turned to the room. "Everyone, stop what you're doing. Our security guard here believes he's smarter than all of you combined. Let's give him the spotlight." She gestured toward an empty workstation. "Go ahead. Fix it. Show us your genius." Marcus looked at the workstation, then at the 30-plus engineers staring at him with smirks and crossed arms. His hands were trembling. I can't lose this job, he thought. Daniel needs me. But he was already walking toward the terminal. The chair squeaked when Marcus sat down. He could feel every eye in the room on him. He could hear the whispers. Is this a joke? Did she seriously let the janitor touch the system? This is going to be hilarious. Marcus ignored them. His fingers touched the keyboard, and for a moment, just a moment, he was transported back. Back to a different office. A different life. When he was Marcus Webb, Senior Security Architect. When companies paid him 6 figures to protect their networks. When his wife was still alive, and his son was still healthy, and the world made sense. He closed his eyes. Breathed. Then he started typing. The first thing he did was pull up the network traffic logs. Not the flashy ones everyone was looking at, the ones showing the breach, but the quiet ones. The background processes. The stuff nobody pays attention to. What's he doing? Someone whispered. No idea. Looks like he's looking at the wrong screens. Marcus didn't react. His eyes were scanning, processing, filtering through thousands of data points per second. There. Port 8443. Exactly where he said it would be. A tiny, almost invisible data stream. Masked to look like routine authentication traffic. But it wasn't routine. It was siphoning data out at a rate of about 50 megabytes per second, the real attack. Found it, Marcus muttered. He pulled up the packet structure. Analyzed the encryption wrapper. His fingers flew across the keyboard, now faster than they'd moved in years. He's actually doing something, someone said, surprised. Probably making it worse. Marcus kept working. The Hydra framework was smart. It was designed to adapt, to evolve, to resist conventional countermeasures. But Marcus had studied this attack pattern for months back in 2009. He'd written papers about it. He'd designed the original defense, and whoever modified this version had made a mistake. A small one. Almost undetectable. But Marcus saw it. The polymorphic wrapper recycled its encryption keys every 60 seconds. Which meant for about a 3-second window during each cycle, the attack was vulnerable. Marcus watched the clock. Counted down. 57, 58, 59. Now. His fingers moved like lightning. He injected a custom script, one he'd written from scratch years ago, stored in a memory he'd tried to forget, directly into the vulnerability window. The script did 3 things simultaneously. First, it isolated the malicious data stream, cutting it off from the main network, like a surgeon severing a diseased limb. Second, it deployed a honeypot, a fake database that looked real enough to fool the attackers into thinking they were still extracting data, when really they were downloading nothing but garbage. Third, and most importantly, it traced the attack back to its source and planted a marker, a digital fingerprint, that would make the attackers identifiable to any law enforcement agency in the world. All of this happened in approximately 43 seconds. And then silence. The red alert stopped. The scrolling numbers froze. The alarms went quiet. Marcus sat back in the chair. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. What? Derek Morrison stepped forward, staring at his tablet. What just happened? Jennifer Chen was already at another terminal pulling up diagnostics. The breach is contained, she said slowly. The extraction has stopped. All network integrity restored. She looked up at Marcus with an expression he couldn't quite read. He did it, she said. He actually did it. The room erupted. Engineers crowded around the terminals, checking and rechecking the data. Voices overlapped, confused, amazed, disbelieving. How is that possible? Who is this guy? I've never seen code like that before. But Marcus wasn't listening. He was already standing up, already heading for the door, because his phone had buzzed in his pocket 3 minutes ago. A message from the hospital. And he knew, with the cold certainty of a man who had received too many of those messages, that his son needed him more than this room full of strangers ever would. "Where do you think you're going?" Victoria's voice stopped him at the door. Marcus turned. She was standing in the middle of the room, her face unreadable. "My son is in the hospital," Marcus said quietly. "I need to go." "Your son?" "Yes, ma'am. He's 9. He's sick, and he's waiting for me." Victoria stared at him for a long moment. "You just saved my company from losing $200 million. "Yes, ma'am." "And you're leaving without—" "What?" "Without asking for anything. Without demanding recognition." Marcus almost smiled. "Almost. Ma'am, I've been invisible for a long time. I'm used to it. Right now, the only thing I need is to hold my boy's hand and tell him Daddy's here." He pushed open the door. "Wait," Victoria said. Something in her voice had changed. Something small and fragile that she probably hadn't let anyone hear in years. "What's your name?" "Your full name." Marcus paused. "Marcus Webb," he said. "Just Marcus." And then he was gone. The elevator ride down felt like it took forever. Marcus leaned against the wall, letting his body shake now that no one could see. He'd done it. After all these years. After everything he'd lost. After every door that had closed in his face. Every resume that went unanswered. Every interview where they looked at his age and his address and decided he wasn't worth the risk. He'd done it. And nobody in that room, not one of them, knew what it cost him to sit down at that terminal. To remember who he used to be. To prove that the man inside the security uniform was still in there somewhere, buried under all those years of grief and guilt and quiet desperation. His phone buzzed again. This time he looked at it. St. Michael's Hospital. "Please call regarding Daniel Webb. Room 412. Marcus closed his eyes. "I'm coming, buddy," he whispered. "Daddy's coming." The elevator doors opened. He walked through the lobby. Clocked out. Stepped into the cold night air. And somewhere above him, in a glass tower full of people who would never know his name, 31 engineers were still trying to figure out how a security guard had just done the impossible. The parking lot at St. Michael's Hospital was nearly empty at this hour. Marcus pulled his 15-year-old Honda Civic into the same spot he always used, third row from the entrance under the broken streetlight that nobody ever fixed. He'd parked there so many times over the past 8 months that the security guards had stopped checking his visitor pass. He sat in the car for a moment, hands still gripping the steering wheel. His fingers were trembling again. Not from the cold, not from exhaustion, from something deeper, something he'd spent years trying to bury. The phone call from the hospital had been brief. Daniel's fever had spiked. They'd increased his medication. He was stable now, but they wanted Marcus there just in case. Just in case. Those 3 words had become the soundtrack of his life. Marcus took a breath, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, and got out of the car. The walk from the parking lot to room 412 took exactly 4 minutes and 23 seconds. He knew because he'd counted it 100 times. Past the reception desk where Maria always worked the night shift. Up the elevator to the 4th floor. Left at the nurse's station where Sandra kept a jar of butterscotch candies for the kids. Down the hallway with the faded paintings of balloons and rainbows that were supposed to make dying children feel better. Marcus hated those paintings. He pushed open the door to room 412 slowly, not wanting to wake Daniel if he was sleeping. But Daniel wasn't sleeping. He was sitting up in bed, his thin arms wrapped around a worn stuffed elephant named Gerald, watching the door like he'd been waiting all night. Daddy. That one word broke Marcus into 1,000 pieces. "Hey, buddy." Marcus crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. "I came as fast as I could." "I knew you would." Daniel's voice was small, but certain. "I told the nurse. I told her my daddy always comes." Marcus reached out and touched his son's face. The skin was warm, too warm, but the fever had clearly come down from whatever spike had triggered the call. Daniel's eyes were tired, but bright. Still fighting. Still hoping. "How you feeling, champ?" "Okay, my tummy hurts a little, but Nurse Sandra gave me the good medicine, the one that tastes like grape." "That's good. That's real good." Daniel studied his father's face with the unsettling perception that sick children sometimes develop as if proximity to death gave them clarity about life. "Daddy, you look tired." "I'm okay, buddy." "Did something happen at work?" Marcus hesitated. He'd never told Daniel much about his job at Nexus Digital. Never told him that the man who used to design security systems for Fortune 500 companies now spent his nights checking badges and mopping floors. Daniel thought his father was an important person who worked with computers. Marcus didn't have the heart to correct him. "Just a busy night," Marcus said. "Nothing to worry about." "Did you help people?" The question hit Marcus harder than he expected. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think maybe I did." Daniel smiled. It was the same smile his mother used to have, the one that made everything feel possible, even when the world was falling apart. "I knew it," Daniel said. "Mommy always said you were the smartest person she ever met. She said you could fix anything." Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. "Your mom? She said a lot of nice things. I miss her." "I know, buddy. I miss her too." Daniel was quiet for a moment, stroking Gerald's worn ear, the way he always did when he was thinking. "Daddy." "Yeah. Am I gonna die?" The question came out so casual, so matter-of-fact, that Marcus almost didn't register it. Then it hit him like a truck. "What?" "No. Nobody." "You're not. Why would you ask that?" "Tommy died," Daniel said simply. "He was in the room next to me. We used to play video games together. And then one day he wasn't there anymore. Nurse Sandra said he went to heaven." Marcus couldn't speak. His throat had closed up entirely. "I'm not scared," Daniel continued. "I mean, I'm a little scared. But if I go to heaven, I'll get to see Mommy again, and she'll be so happy. She'll make me pancakes like she used to. The ones with the chocolate chips that look like smiley faces." "Daniel." Marcus's voice came out broken. "Listen to me. Are you listening?" Daniel nodded. "You are not going to die. Do you hear me? I'm not going to let that happen. Whatever it takes, whatever I have to do, I'm going to make sure you get better. That's my job. That's the only job that matters to me." "Okay." Daniel looked at his father for a long moment. "Okay, Daddy." "Say it. Say you believe me." "I believe you." Marcus pulled his son into a hug, careful not to disturb the IV line running into his thin arm. He held him like he was trying to transfer his own life force through sheer will. "I love you, buddy, more than anything in this whole world." "I love you too, Daddy, more than Gerald." Despite everything, Marcus laughed. "More than Gerald. That's pretty serious." "I know. Don't tell him I said that." Marcus held his son until Daniel's breathing slowed and his small body relaxed into sleep. Then, he gently laid him back on the pillow, tucked Gerald under his arm, and sat in the chair beside the bed. He didn't sleep. He never slept when he was here. Instead, he watched his son breathe and tried not to think about the stack of medical bills in his glove compartment. The ones he hadn't opened because he already knew what they said. The ones that added up to more than he would make in 10 years at his current salary. Somewhere around 3 a.m., his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Jennifer Chen from Nexus Digital. I need to speak with you. It's important." Marcus stared at the message for a long time. Then he turned off his phone and went back to watching his son breathe. The past could wait. It always did. 3 floors up and across town, in a penthouse apartment that cost more than most people's houses. Victoria Sinclair was not sleeping either. She stood at her floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights, holding a glass of whiskey she hadn't touched. The crisis was over. The money was safe. Her company had survived. But Victoria couldn't stop thinking about the security guard, Marcus Webb. The way he'd looked at her when she insulted him. Not angry, not wounded, just patient. Like he was used to it. Like he'd been carrying that weight for so long, it didn't even register anymore. And then the way he'd sat down at that terminal and done in 43 seconds what her entire engineering team couldn't do in 4 hours. Who the hell was he? Victoria pulled out her phone and dialed. "Richard, I know what time it is. I don't care. I need you to run a background check on someone. Full workup. Everything you can find." She paused. "The name is Marcus Webb. He works security at Nexus Digital. Night shift. I want to know where he came from, where he went to school, where he's worked, and why he's currently making $12 an hour at my company. I want it on my desk by 8 a.m. She hung up without saying goodbye. Then she took her first sip of whiskey and kept staring at the city. Something about this didn't add up, and Victoria Sinclair had built her empire by solving equations that didn't add up. By 8:15 the next morning, Victoria had her answer. She sat at her desk reading through the file Richard had compiled, and with each page, her expression shifted from curiosity to confusion to something that looked almost like shame. Marcus James Webb, born 1971 in Detroit, Michigan. Father worked the line at a Ford plant for 32 years. Mother was a schoolteacher. Marcus was the first person in his family to go to college. He graduated summa cum laude from MIT with a degree in computer science. Top of his class. Published 3 papers before he turned 25. Got recruited straight out of school by DataShield Technologies, one of the biggest cybersecurity firms in the country. By 30, he was their senior security architect. By 35, he was designing systems that protected banks, hospitals, government agencies. He held 7 patents. He was a keynote speaker at international conferences. Forbes once called him one of the most brilliant minds in cybersecurity. And then, 8 years ago, everything stopped. Victoria flipped to the next page. There was a newspaper clipping. Local paper from Columbus, Ohio. The headline read, "Local tech executive's wife dies in car accident." Victoria read the article slowly. Sarah Webb, 38, killed when a drunk driver ran a red light and struck her vehicle. She was 7 months pregnant at the time. Emergency responders managed to save the baby, a boy, but Sarah died at the scene. The article mentioned that her husband Marcus Webb had been at work when he received the call. Victoria set down the paper. She understood now. The gaps in his resume. The spiral from corner offices to security uniforms. The way he'd said, "My son is in the hospital," like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. Because it was. She kept reading. After his wife's death, Marcus had taken a leave of absence from DataShield. Then another. Then another. Eventually, they let him go, restructuring, the official reason said. But Victoria knew what that meant. She'd done it herself to employees who became liabilities. He'd tried to get back into the field, applied to dozens of companies. But the industry had moved on. New technologies, new faces, new priorities. And Marcus had been out of the game too long caring for a newborn son who'd been born into tragedy. The medical bills started piling up. The boy Daniel had complications from his premature birth. Then 2 years ago, he was diagnosed with leukemia. And Marcus Webb, the man who once commanded 6-figure salaries and testified before Congress, started working nights as a security guard. Because it was the only job that gave him flexible hours to be at the hospital when his son needed him. Victoria closed the file. She sat very still for a very long time. Then she picked up her phone and dialed Jennifer Chen. "Jennifer, I need you to find Marcus Webb. Bring him to my office, today. He's not scheduled to work until tonight. I don't care. Find him. Tell him it's not optional. And Jennifer, yes, be nice about it." She hung up and looked at the file again. The photo clipped to the front was from Marcus's DataShield days. He was smiling, standing next to a pretty woman with dark hair. Both of them looked so young, so happy, so completely unaware of what was coming. Victoria had been called a lot of things in her career. Ruthless, cold, a shark, and she'd worn those labels like armor because in her world, softness was weakness. But sitting here looking at this photo, she felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. She felt ashamed. Marcus was still at the hospital when his phone rang. He'd spent the night in the chair beside Daniel's bed, waking every time a nurse came in, checking Daniel's breathing, counting the seconds between each beep of the heart monitor. By morning, Daniel's fever had broken completely. He was eating Jell-O and watching cartoons like nothing had happened. Kids were resilient that way. They bounced back from things that would destroy adults. Marcus was in the hallway, stretching his aching back, when the unknown number appeared on his screen again. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. "Mr. Webb, this is Jennifer Chen from Nexus Digital." Marcus leaned against the wall. "Ms. Chen, I'm not scheduled until tonight." "I know. This isn't about your shift. Ms. Sinclair would like to see you, today, as soon as possible." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "Am I being fired?" There was a pause on the other end. "No, at least I don't think so. She didn't tell me why she wants to see you, but she was very clear that it was important." Marcus looked through the window at Daniel, who was laughing at something on the TV screen. "My son is in the hospital. I can't just leave. Mr. Webb." Jennifer's voice softened. "I don't know what's going on, but after what you did last night, I don't think this is a bad thing. And honestly, I think you should hear what she has to say." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Fine. Give me 2 hours." He arrived at Nexus Digital at noon. The building looked different in daylight, busier, more official. More like the kind of place where important things happened and unimportant people were reminded of their place. Marcus walked through the lobby in his regular clothes, jeans, a flannel shirt, the jacket his wife had bought him 15 years ago that he still couldn't bring himself to throw away. He felt exposed without his uniform, like the costume had been protecting him and now he was naked. The receptionist recognized him. "Mr. Webb, Ms. Sinclair is expecting you. Take the elevator to the top floor. Her assistant will meet you." Marcus nodded and walked to the elevator. Top floor. Of course. The ride up took forever. Marcus watched the numbers climb and tried to prepare himself for whatever was coming. More humiliation. An official termination with a check for 2 weeks' pay. Maybe they'd found out he'd been watching their network traffic without authorization. Maybe this was a legal thing. Maybe they were going to press charges. The doors opened. A young man in an expensive suit was waiting. "Mr. Webb, right this way, please." Marcus followed him down a hallway that probably cost more to decorate than his entire apartment building. Past offices with glass walls where important-looking people had important-looking meetings. Past a break room with a coffee machine that probably made drinks Marcus couldn't pronounce. Finally, they reached a set of double doors. "Ms. Sinclair is waiting for you inside." The young man opened the door, gestured for Marcus to enter, and closed it behind him. Marcus found himself in an office that was roughly the size of his entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city. Minimalist furniture that probably cost more than his car. Art on the walls that looked like it belonged in a museum. And in the center of it all, Victoria Sinclair. She was standing behind her desk watching him enter. Her expression was unreadable. "Mr. Webb, thank you for coming." "I wasn't sure I had a choice." "You always have a choice. Please, sit down." She gestured to a chair across from her desk. Marcus sat. Victoria remained standing for a moment longer, like she was trying to figure out how to start. Then she picked up a file from her desk. MIT, summa cum laude. 7 patents. Senior Security Architect at DataShield Technologies. Keynote speaker at DEF CON in 2011 and 2014. Published in the Journal of CyberSecurity. Once consulted for the NSA. She looked up at him. "Did I miss anything?" Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. "You ran a background check on me." I run background checks on everyone who saves my company $200 million. It's a habit. She set the file down and finally sat across from him. Why didn't you say something last night when I said those things? Why didn't you tell me who you were? Would it have mattered? Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. Honestly, probably not. I was scared and angry and looking for someone to blame. You were convenient. People usually are. Victoria studied him. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Bitterness. Resentment. You should be furious. You went from being one of the most respected minds in cybersecurity to checking badges at my front door. Most people would be screaming about how unfair life is. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Ms. Sinclair, I learned a long time ago that life doesn't care about fair. Fair is a story we tell ourselves when things go our way. When they don't go our way, we find out what we're really made of. And what are you made of? Marcus thought about Daniel, about the hospital bed, about the bills he couldn't pay, and the fear he couldn't show. Whatever my son needs me to be. Victoria leaned back in her chair. Tell me about him. Daniel. It wasn't a request, but it wasn't a demand either. It was something in between, a genuine question from someone who had probably forgotten how to ask them. He's 9, Marcus said. He's brave. Braver than me. He was born 2 months early the night his mother died. Doctors said he might not make it through the first week. Then they said he might not make it through the first year, but he kept fighting. He's been fighting his whole life. Marcus's voice caught. 2 years ago they found the cancer. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. He's been in and out of that hospital ever since. Chemo, radiation, more chemo. They say he's responding well. They say he has a good chance. But every time I look at him, every time I see how thin he's gotten, how tired he is, I wonder if I'm doing enough, if there's something more I could do. He stopped talking. He'd said more in that minute than he'd said to anyone in years. Victoria was very still. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for what I said last night, for how I treated you. You deserved better than that. Marcus wasn't sure how to respond. He'd imagined a lot of scenarios when he walked into this office. An apology wasn't one of them. I appreciate that, Ms. Sinclair, but I didn't come here for an apology. No, you came because I asked you to, and now I'm going to tell you why. She leaned forward. I want to offer you a job, a real job, Director of CyberSecurity, full benefits, full salary, full authority. You'd report directly to me. Marcus stared at her. I'm sorry. What? You heard me. I'm offering you a position that pays $300,000 a year, plus bonuses, stock options, and a benefits package that includes full medical coverage for you and any dependents. The words hit Marcus like physical blows. Full medical coverage for Daniel. Ms. Sinclair. Victoria. If we're going to work together, you can call me Victoria. Victoria. The name felt strange in his mouth. I haven't worked in cybersecurity in 8 years. The field has changed. The technologies have changed. I'm not sure I'm... Stop. Victoria held up her hand. Don't do that. Don't pretend you're less than you are just because the world told you to shrink. I watched you last night. I saw what you did in 43 seconds. That wasn't rust. That wasn't luck. That was mastery. The kind that doesn't fade no matter how long you've been away from the game. She stood up and walked to the window. I've hired a lot of people in my career. Smart people. Credentialed people. People who look good in meetings and say the right things and have all the right connections. But last night, when everything was falling apart, none of them could do what you did. She turned back to face him. I don't care about your resume gaps. I don't care that you've been out of the industry. I care about results. And you delivered results when nobody else could. Marcus sat very still, trying to process what was happening. This is a lot to take in. I know. And I'm not asking you to decide right now. Take a few days. Think about it. Talk to your son if you need to. But know this, the offer is real and it's not going away. She walked back to her desk and picked up a business card. My direct number. Call me when you've made a decision. Marcus took the card. His hands were trembling again, but this time for a different reason. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why the apology? The job offer, you could have just given me a bonus and forgotten about me. Why all this? Victoria was quiet for a moment. Because I've spent 22 years building this company by being harder and colder and more ruthless than everyone around me. And last night I saw the cost of that. I saw what happens when you stop seeing people as people and start seeing them as functions. You become someone who mocks a man while his son is dying in a hospital. She met his eyes. I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't know if I know how to be anything else. But I have to try. And you, what you did, who you are, you reminded me why I started this company in the first place. Not for the money, not for the power, but because I genuinely believed technology could make people's lives better. She almost smiled. So consider this job offer my first step toward remembering that. Marcus stood up slowly. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. He walked to the door, then stopped. Victoria. Yes. For what it's worth, I accept your apology. Something shifted in her face. Something that might have been relief. Thank you, Marcus. He nodded and walked out. The elevator ride down felt different this time. The numbers descended, but something inside Marcus was rising. For 8 years, he had been invisible. A ghost of the man he used to be. Going through the motions. Surviving, but not living. And now, for the first time since Sarah died, he felt something he'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. He pulled out his phone and dialed the hospital. Hi, this is Marcus Webb. Can you connect me to room 412? A pause. A click. Then, Daddy? Daniel's voice thin but happy. Hey, buddy. I have some news. I think something good might be happening. What kind of good? Marcus smiled. Really smiled for the first time in longer than he could remember. The kind where Daddy might be able to fix some things. Important things. Like a superhero. Something like that. I knew it, Daniel said. I told Nurse Sandra. I told her my daddy could do anything. Marcus leaned against the wall of the elevator as the doors opened to the lobby. I don't know about anything, buddy, but I'm going to try. For you, I'm going to try. That's okay, Daddy. Trying is the bravest part. Marcus closed his eyes. His 9-year-old son, sick and fighting and braver than anyone had a right to be, had just said the truest thing he'd heard in years. Trying is the bravest part. I love you, Daniel. I love you too, Daddy. More than Gerald, but don't tell him. Marcus laughed and the sound surprised him. Your secret's safe with me. He walked out of Nexus Digital into the afternoon sun. The city looked the same as it had that morning. The same cars, the same people, the same world spinning on indifferent to the small dramas playing out in hospital rooms and corporate offices. But Marcus felt different. He felt like a man who had been holding his breath for 8 years and had finally remembered how to exhale. There was still a long road ahead. Daniel's treatment, the medical bills, the uncertainty of starting over at 54. But for the first time in a long time, the road didn't look quite so dark. He got into his car, turned the key, and drove toward the hospital. Toward his son. Toward whatever came next. The decision kept Marcus awake for 3 nights. He sat in the plastic chair beside Daniel's hospital bed, watching his son sleep, turning Victoria's business card over and over in his fingers until the edges went soft. $300,000 a year. Full medical coverage. The words echoed in his head like a song he'd forgotten the melody to. On the 3rd night, Daniel woke up around 2 a.m., saw his father sitting there in the dim light, and reached out his small hand. "Daddy, why aren't you sleeping?" Marcus tucked the business card into his pocket. "Just thinking, buddy." "About what?" "About whether to do something scary." Daniel considered this with the gravity only a 9-year-old could muster. "Is it the good kind of scary or the bad kind?" "What do you mean?" "Well," Daniel said, adjusting Gerald under his arm. "Nurse Sandra says there's 2 kinds of scary. There's the scary that means something bad is going to happen. And there's the scary that means something good might happen, but you don't know for sure. She says the second kind is called courage." Marcus stared at his son. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart, Daddy. You just don't listen." Despite everything, Marcus laughed. "You're right. I don't listen enough. So which kind of scary is it?" Marcus thought about the question. Really thought about it. "I think it might be the second kind." "Then you should do it." Daniel said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. That's what Mom would say. She always said the best things in life are on the other side of scared. Marcus felt his throat tighten. "You remember that?" "I remember everything about Mom. I keep her in here." Daniel tapped his chest right over his heart. "That way she's always with me, even when I can't see her." Marcus couldn't speak. He just reached out and held his son's hand. "Daddy, yeah, buddy. Whatever you're thinking about doing, I think you should do it, because you're the bravest person I know, even braver than the Avengers, and they have superpowers." Marcus squeezed his hand. "You really think so?" "I know so." They sat there in the quiet for a long moment. Then Daniel's eyes started to close. "Daddy." "Yeah. I'm glad you're my dad. I'm glad you're my son, buddy, more than you'll ever know." Daniel smiled sleepily, mumbled something about Gerald needing a bath, and drifted back to sleep. Marcus sat there until the sun came up. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed Victoria's number. She answered on the second ring. "Marcus?" "I'm in." There was a pause. "Just like that. Just like that. When do I start?" "How about Monday?" Marcus looked at his son. "Monday works." Mad. The first day was harder than he expected. Marcus arrived at Nexus Digital at 7:45 a.m., wearing a suit he'd bought at Goodwill the day before. It didn't fit quite right, too loose in the shoulders, too short in the sleeves, but it was the best he could afford on short notice. He walked through the lobby where he used to check badges and felt every eye on him. The receptionist, who used to ignore him, now smiled nervously. "Good morning, Mr. Webb. Ms. Sinclair is expecting you. 20th floor." Mr. Webb. The words felt foreign in his ears. He took the elevator up, watching the numbers climb, trying to steady his breathing. When the doors opened, Victoria was waiting. "Marcus, right on time." Force of habit. She studied his suit but said nothing about it. "Let me show you to your office." His office. He had an office now. Victoria led him down a hallway he'd never seen before, past rows of glass-walled rooms where engineers looked up from their screens to stare. He could feel their curiosity, their skepticism. Word had clearly spread about who he was and where he came from. They stopped in front of a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. "This is you," Victoria said. "Everything you need should be inside. It's set up your accounts this morning. Your team will be here at 9 for introductions." "My team?" 12 people, the best we have. They're good, Marcus, but they need leadership. Real leadership. That's why you're here." Marcus stepped into the office. It was bigger than his apartment. There was a desk, a computer, a chair that probably cost more than his car. "Victoria." "Yes." "I don't know if I can do this." She walked up beside him and looked out the window at the city below. "You know what I learned building this company? Nobody knows if they can do anything until they do it. Confidence is a lie we tell ourselves to get through the day. What matters is showing up anyway. You showed up. That's the hard part. What if I fail? Then you fail. And we figure out what went wrong. And we try again. She turned to face him. I didn't hire you because I thought you were perfect. I hired you because I saw what you could do when everything was falling apart. That's the person I need. Not someone who's never failed. Someone who's failed and kept going anyway. Marcus was quiet. 9 o'clock, Victoria said. Conference room B. Don't be late. She walked out, her heels clicking against the floor. Marcus stood alone in his new office, looking at the city through windows he'd never imagined he'd see from this side. Then he sat down at his desk and got to work. The team meeting did not go well. 12 engineers sat around a conference table, looking at Marcus like he was a specimen in a zoo. He recognized some of them from that night, the night he'd saved the company, while they watched and smirked. Nobody was smirking now, but nobody looked happy either. Jennifer Chen sat at the far end of the table. She was the only one who met his eyes. Good morning, Marcus said. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm your new director of cybersecurity. Silence. I know what you're thinking. Who is this guy? Where did he come from? Why is he qualified to lead us? More silence. Fair questions. I'll answer them. 15 years ago, I was the senior security architect at Data Shield Technologies. I designed systems that protected banks, hospitals, and government agencies. I wrote code that some of you probably studied in school. A few people shifted in their seats. Then life happened. My wife died. My son got sick. I had to make choices. Some of those choices took me away from this field for a long time, and I'm not going to pretend that didn't cost me. It did. I'm rusty. I'm behind on some of the newer technologies. I'm going to need your help catching up. He paused. But here's what I know. I know how to think about security. I know how to find the holes that other people miss. And I know how to stay calm when everything is on fire. That's what I bring to this table. Not ego, not credentials. Just the willingness to do whatever it takes to protect this company. He looked around the room. Now, I'm sure some of you have opinions about my being here. Good. I want to hear them. Not behind my back to my face. If you think I'm making a mistake, tell me. If you think there's a better way, show me. I'm not here to prove I'm smarter than you. I'm here to make all of us better. Silence again, but different this time. Less hostile. Then a voice from the middle of the table. I have a question. Marcus looked at the speaker. Young guy, mid-20s, expensive glasses, the kind of arrogant posture that came from being told you're brilliant your whole life. Go ahead. That night, when the breach happened, how did you know about the backup authentication servers you said you'd been monitoring our network traffic? For 11 months. Marcus nodded. That's right. That's not exactly authorized. You were a security guard. You weren't supposed to have access to any of that. No, I wasn't. So technically what you did was a security violation. The room tensed. People looked at each other. Marcus met the young man's eyes without flinching. You're right. It was. And if you want to report me, I won't stop you. But here's the truth. I spent 11 months watching your systems because I couldn't turn it off. Once you've spent your life protecting networks, you don't stop seeing the vulnerabilities. I saw things that worried me. I reported them twice. Nobody listened. And when the attack came, I did what I had to do. Even though it wasn't your job. Especially because it wasn't my job. Sometimes the most important things are the ones nobody assigns to you. The young man stared at him for a long moment. Fair enough, he said finally. I'm Kevin Park. I lead the incident response team. Good to meet you, Kevin. I'm looking forward to working with you. Kevin didn't smile, but he nodded, and that was enough. Anyone else? Marcus asked. Silence. Good. Then let's get to work. Jennifer, can you walk me through the current security architecture? I want to understand what we're protecting and where the weak points are. Jennifer stood up. Follow me. The meeting was over. Nobody had stormed out. Nobody had quit. It wasn't a victory, but it wasn't a defeat either. Marcus would take it. The first month was a blur. Marcus worked 18-hour days. He reviewed every line of code, every system architecture document, every incident report from the past 3 years. He learned names. He learned personalities. He learned who could be trusted and who was just there for the paycheck. He made enemies. There were people who resented him. People who thought they should have gotten his job. People who couldn't accept that a 54-year-old former security guard was telling them what to do. Derek Morrison was the worst. The CTO had never forgiven Marcus for making him look bad that night. And now, with Marcus in a position of authority, Derek took every opportunity to undermine him. In meetings, he questioned Marcus's decisions. In emails, he copied Victoria on every minor disagreement. In hallways, he made comments just loud enough for people to hear. Heard our new security director learned cybersecurity from YouTube tutorials. Must be nice to get promoted for doing someone else's job? I give him 6 months before he crashes and burns. Marcus ignored it. He had bigger problems, like the fact that Nexus Digital's security infrastructure was held together with duct tape and prayers. The more he dug, the worse it got. Legacy systems that should have been retired years ago. Patches that had never been applied. Vulnerabilities that had been flagged and forgotten. The attack that nearly cost them $200 million wasn't a fluke, it was inevitable. The only surprise was that it hadn't happened sooner. Marcus started building a plan. A complete overhaul. New systems, new protocols, new training. It would cost money, a lot of money, but it was the only way to prevent another disaster. He presented it to Victoria at the end of his 4th week. She read through the proposal in silence. 20 pages. Charts, diagrams, cost projections. 3 years of work compressed into a document that would either make or break his career. This is ambitious, she said finally. It's necessary. The board will push back. This budget, it's significant. So is losing $200 million in an hour. Victoria looked at him over the top of the document. You're not afraid to speak your mind, are you? I spent 8 years being afraid. I'm done with that. She almost smiled. Good. I'll take this to the board. But Marcus, you need to know something. Not everyone in this company wants you to succeed. There are people who see you as a threat. People who would rather watch you fail than admit they were wrong about you. I know. Do you? Because this is going to get harder before it gets easier. Are you ready for that? Marcus thought about Daniel. About the hospital bills that were finally getting paid. About the look on his son's face when he'd told him Daddy got a new job. I don't have a choice. Victoria nodded slowly. Then let's get to work. The board approved the plan. Not easily. Not without a fight. Victoria had to call in favors, make promises, threaten resignations. But in the end, they approved it. Marcus had 90 days to implement the first phase. He gathered his team in the conference room and laid it out. Here's the situation. We have 90 days to rebuild the core of our security infrastructure. That's not a lot of time. It's going to require long hours. It's going to require sacrifice. And it's going to require all of us working together in ways we never have before. He looked around the room. I know some of you have doubts about me. I know some of you think this is impossible. But I'm asking you to trust me. Not because I'm your boss. Not because Victoria hired me. But because I've been where you are. I've faced impossible deadlines and skeptical colleagues and systems that seemed too broken to fix. And I'm still here. Kevin Park spoke up. What do you need from us? Everything. Your best work. Your best ideas. Your willingness to tell me when I'm wrong. Marcus paused. And your patience. Because I'm going to make mistakes. We all are. What matters is how we respond to them. Jennifer Chen raised her hand. Where do we start? Marcus walked to the whiteboard and started drawing. Here. The authentication servers. That's where the last attack exploited us. That's where we fix first. We build a new system from the ground up. Redundant, isolated, monitored. If anyone tries to hit us there again, we see them coming from a mile away. He turned back to face the team. Any questions? Nobody spoke. Then let's get to work. The next 6 weeks were the hardest of Marcus's life. He slept 4 hours a night, sometimes less. He ate at his desk when he remembered to eat at all. He made decisions that affected millions of dollars and hundreds of people, and he second-guessed every single one. But slowly, impossibly, things started to change. The new authentication system went live without a hitch. The vulnerability assessment uncovered 43 critical issues that got patched. The incident response protocols were rewritten, tested, and implemented. And his team started to believe. Kevin Park, who had challenged him that first day, became his strongest ally. They worked late into the night, arguing about code and strategy, and the best way to stop attacks that hadn't happened yet. Kevin was arrogant, sure, but he was also brilliant, and once Marcus earned his respect, Kevin gave everything he had. Jennifer Chen turned out to be the best systems architect Marcus had ever worked with. She had a way of seeing connections that other people missed, of understanding how the pieces fit together. Marcus promoted her to lead the infrastructure redesign. She didn't disappoint. Even the skeptics started coming around. They saw the results. They saw the dedication. They saw a man who worked harder than anyone else and never asked for credit. But not everyone was convinced. Derek Morrison watched Marcus's success with growing resentment. Every milestone Marcus hit was a reminder of Derek's failure that night. And Derek was not a man who handled failure well. He started making calls, quietly, to board members, to shareholders, to anyone who would listen. This Webb guy, he's in over his head. The board is making a mistake trusting him. Mark my words, this whole thing is going to blow up in our faces. The whispers spread. The doubts grew. And Derek waited for his moment. It came on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus was in his office, reviewing the final testing protocols for the new firewall system, when his phone buzzed. A message from Victoria. My office. Now. Something in those 3 words made his stomach tighten. He walked to Victoria's office and found her sitting behind her desk, her face unreadable. Derek Morrison was there too, standing by the window with his arms crossed and a look of barely concealed satisfaction. Close the door, Victoria said. Marcus closed it. What's going on? Derek spoke before Victoria could answer. We have a problem. A big one. He walked over to Victoria's desk and turned her laptop to face Marcus. On the screen was a news article from a tech blog. The headline read, Nexus Digital's new security chief savior or liability. Marcus felt his blood go cold. He scanned the article. It detailed everything. His background at DataShield, his wife's death, Daniel's illness, his years working as a security guard, the circumstances of his hiring. And then at the bottom, a question that twisted like a knife. Can a company worth $2 billion really trust its security to a man who couldn't even protect his own career? Where did this come from? Marcus asked quietly. Anonymous source, Derek said. Someone who claims to have inside knowledge of your background and the circumstances of your hiring. The article implies that Victoria hired you out of guilt, not merit, that you're a charity case. Marcus looked at Victoria. Her expression gave nothing away. Is that what you think? What I think doesn't matter right now, Victoria said. What matters is that this article has been shared over 10,000 times in the past 2 hours. The board is asking questions. Shareholders are nervous. We have a PR crisis. I didn't leak this, Marcus said. I know you didn't. Then who? He stopped. He looked at Derek. The barely concealed satisfaction on his face. You, Derek's expression flickered. Excuse me, You leaked this. You've been waiting for a chance to take me down since the night I saved this company, and now you think you found it. That's a serious accusation, Derek said, but his voice wavered slightly. Is it? Let me ask you something, Derek. How many people in this company know about my wife, about my son, about the specifics of how I got hired? Derek said nothing. 3 people. Me, Victoria, and whoever she told. Which means either Victoria leaked this story to sabotage her own hire, or someone accessed her files without authorization. He turned to Victoria. Check the access logs on your personnel files. See who's been looking at my records in the past week. Victoria's eyes narrowed. She turned to her computer and started typing. Derek's face went pale. This is ridiculous, he said. I don't have to stand here and listen to... Got it, Victoria said. She looked up from her screen. Derek, would you like to explain why you accessed Marcus's personnel file 6 times in the past 3 days? Silence. Derek's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I was just doing due diligence. As CTO, I have a responsibility to... To what? Victoria stood up. To leak confidential employee information to the press, to sabotage a colleague because you can't handle the fact that he did your job better than you could. That's not to get out. Derek blinked. What? You're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you to your office to collect your things. You have 30 minutes to be off the premises. Victoria, you can't. I just did. She pressed a button on her phone. Security. I need an escort to my office. Now. Derek looked from Victoria to Marcus, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. This isn't over, he said. You think you've won? This company will fail with him in charge. And when it does, everyone will remember that I tried to warn them. Goodbye, Derek. 2 security guards appeared at the door. Derek looked at them, then back at Victoria. You're making a mistake. I've made plenty of mistakes. Hiring you was one of them. Keeping you this long was another. This isn't one of them. Derek turned and walked out, flanked by the guards. The door closed behind him. Marcus and Victoria stood in silence. Well, Victoria said finally, that was dramatic. Are you okay? I'm fine. I should have fired him months ago. He's been dead weight since the day he got here. She sat back down. The question is, are you okay? Marcus thought about the article, about his life laid bare for strangers to judge. It's all true, he said. Everything in that article. The only lie is the implication. What implication? That I'm weak. That what happened to me makes me less capable. That suffering is a disqualification. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. You know what I think, Marcus? What? I think suffering is the only thing that qualifies anyone for anything that matters. The people who've never lost anything don't know what they're fighting for. They don't know what it costs to keep going when everything falls apart. She stood up and walked to him. You know, and that's exactly why I hired you. Marcus didn't know what to say. The article is going to cause some noise, Victoria continued. The board will have questions, but I'll handle them. What I need from you is to keep doing exactly what you've been doing. Build the system, train the team, prove them all wrong. And if I can't, you can. I've seen it. She held out her hand. 90 days, that's what we agreed. 43 left. Can you do it? Marcus looked at her hand. Then he shook it. I can do it. Then get back to work. Marcus walked to the door, then stopped. Victoria. Yes. Thank you for believing in me. Something softened in her face. Thank you for giving me a reason to. Marcus walked out. The hallway was quiet. News of Derek's firing had probably already started spreading. People would be whispering, wondering, choosing sides. But Marcus didn't care about any of that. He had 43 days to prove that everything he'd lost had been worth something, and he was not going to waste a single one of them. That night, Marcus drove to the hospital. Daniel was awake watching cartoons, looking stronger than he had in weeks. The doctor said his latest tests were encouraging. The treatment was working. Marcus sat down beside him and just watched. His son. His reason for everything. "Daddy, you look tired. Long day, buddy. Did something bad happen?" Marcus thought about the article. About Derek. About everything. Something bad tried to happen, but we stopped it. Like a superhero. Something like that. Daniel smiled. "I told you. You're the bravest." Marcus leaned over and kissed his son's forehead. "No, buddy, you are." Daniel yawned. "Daddy." "Yeah. I think I'm going to get better." Marcus felt his heart crack open. "You do?" "Yeah, because you're here. And you never give up. So I'm not going to give up either." Marcus held his son's hand. "We're going to make it, buddy. Both of us. I promise." Daniel's eyes closed. "I believe you, Daddy." And for the first time in a very long time, Marcus believed it too. 43 days became 40, then 30, then 20. Marcus worked like a man possessed. He arrived before sunrise and left after midnight. He reviewed code until his eyes burned. He tested systems until his fingers ached. He pushed his team harder than they'd ever been pushed, and somehow, impossibly, they pushed back even harder. The new firewall went live on day 32. The intrusion detection system was operational by day 27. The network segmentation protocols were completed on day 21. Each milestone felt like a small victory in a war that never seemed to end. But somewhere around day 18, Marcus noticed something strange. Daniel was getting better. Not slowly, not incrementally. Better in a way that defied every cautious prediction the doctors had made. His color came back. His appetite returned. The dark circles under his eyes faded. When Marcus visited him at night, Daniel wasn't lying in bed anymore. He was sitting up drawing pictures, playing games on the tablet the nurses had given him. On day 15, Dr. Ramirez called Marcus into her office. "I don't want to get your hopes up," she said carefully, "but his latest blood work is remarkable." Marcus felt his heart stop. "What does that mean?" "It means the treatment is working better than we expected. His white cell count is normalizing. The cancer markers are dropping. At this rate..." She paused as if afraid to say the words out loud. "At this rate, we might be looking at remission." Remission. Marcus had to grip the armrest of his chair to keep from falling. How sure are you?" "Nothing is certain with this disease. You know that. But I've been doing this for 20 years, Mr. Webb. And what I'm seeing in your son's results, it's encouraging. Very encouraging." Marcus couldn't speak. Couldn't think. Couldn't do anything but sit there and feel something crack open in his chest. Something that had been locked tight for so long he'd forgotten it existed. Hope. Real hope. Not the desperate white-knuckled kind he'd been clinging to for 2 years, but the genuine breathing kind that might actually survive the night. "What happens now?" he finally managed. "We continue the treatment. Monitor closely. But if things keep going this way..." Dr. Ramirez smiled. "You might be taking your son home in a few weeks." Marcus walked out of that office in a daze. He found Daniel in his room working on a drawing. When Daniel saw his father's face, he put down his crayon. "Daddy, why are you crying?" Marcus hadn't realized he was crying. "Come here, buddy." He sat on the edge of the bed and pulled Daniel into his arms. Held him so tight it was probably uncomfortable, but Daniel didn't complain. He never complained. "The doctor says you're getting better," Marcus whispered. "Really better." "I told you," Daniel said. "I told you I was going to fight." "You did, buddy, you did." "Does this mean I can go home soon?" "Maybe, if you keep getting better." Daniel pulled back and looked at his father with those big, serious eyes. "Daddy." "Yeah. When I go home, can we get a dog?" Marcus laughed a real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and true. "We'll see, buddy." That means yes. That means we'll see. Daniel grinned. It was the most beautiful thing Marcus had ever seen. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Daniel. More than anything in this whole world. Marcus left the hospital that night feeling like he was walking on air. For the first time in years, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. Not gone, it would never be completely gone, but lighter. Like maybe, just maybe, he was allowed to believe that good things could happen. He was so distracted that he almost didn't see the car parked outside his apartment building. A black sedan. Expensive. The kind of car that didn't belong in this neighborhood. Marcus slowed his steps. His instincts, the ones that had kept him alive in corporate boardrooms and crisis situations, kicked in immediately. Someone was waiting for him. He approached cautiously, one hand reaching for his phone. If this was trouble, he wanted to be ready. The driver's side door opened. A man in a dark suit stepped out. Mr. Webb. Marcus stopped. Who's asking? My name is Arthur Christensen. I represent a group of investors who are very interested in speaking with you. At 11 o'clock at night in front of my apartment. We apologize for the unorthodox approach, but the matter is time-sensitive. Marcus studied the man. Late 50s, silver hair, the polished ease of someone who had never worried about money in his life. I'm not interested. You haven't heard what we're offering. I don't need to. Whatever it is, the answer is no. Marcus started walking toward his building. We're prepared to offer you $5 million, Mr. Webb. Marcus stopped. $5 million for what? Christensen smiled. The kind of smile that never reached the eyes. For information. About Nexus Digital's new security infrastructure. The systems you've been building. The vulnerabilities you've identified. The protocols you've implemented. Marcus turned slowly. You want me to sell out my company. We want you to share information that you developed. Information that has significant value on the open market. That's called corporate espionage. That's called betrayal. That's called business, Mr. Webb. Companies buy and sell intelligence all the time. You'd simply be facilitating a transaction. Marcus walked back toward the car. Christensen held his ground, still smiling that dead smile. Let me make sure I understand, Marcus said slowly. You want me to give you proprietary security information about a company that trusted me when no one else would. A company that gave me a second chance when my life was falling apart. And in exchange, you'll give me money. $5 million is not just money, Mr. Webb. It's freedom. It's security for you and your son. It's never having to worry about hospital bills or rent, or whether you can afford groceries. Think about what that money could mean for Daniel. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. Don't say my son's name. Excuse me. You heard me. Don't ever say my son's name again. Christensen's smile flickered. Mr. Webb, I understand you're emotional, but let's be realistic. You've had a difficult life. You've lost so much. This is an opportunity to secure your future. All I have to do is become exactly the kind of person I've spent my whole life refusing to be. Marcus stepped close enough to see the slight nervousness in Christensen's eyes. You want to know what I've learned sitting in hospital rooms watching my son fight for his life? I've learned that there's only one thing that matters in this world. Integrity. Being able to look yourself in the mirror and know that you did the right thing even when the right thing was hard. Even when the wrong thing would have been easier. He shook his head. $5 million wouldn't be enough to make me betray the people who believed in me. $5 billion wouldn't be enough. Because if I did that, if I became that person, I wouldn't be able to face my son. And he's the only thing in this world I care about. Christensen's smile was gone now. You're making a mistake, Mr. Webb. No, I made plenty of mistakes in my life. This isn't one of them. There are people who will be very disappointed to hear this. Then tell them to be disappointed. And tell them if I ever see you or anyone like you near me or my son again, I'll make sure the FBI hears about this little conversation." Christensen stared at him for a long moment. "You're not as smart as people say you are, Mr. Webb." "Maybe not, but I can sleep at night. Can you?" He turned and walked into his building without looking back. Behind him, he heard the car door slam and the engine start. The black sedan pulled away into the night. Marcus stood in the lobby of his building, his heart pounding, his hands shaking. $5 million. There was a time not so long ago when that money would have solved every problem in his life, when he would have done almost anything to get it. But that was before Victoria gave him a chance. Before his team started believing in him. Before Daniel looked at him and said, "You're the bravest person I know." Some things were worth more than money. Marcus took the stairs to his apartment, suddenly exhausted, but strangely at peace. He had no idea that the real test was still coming. Day 10. The board meeting that would determine everything. Marcus had prepared for weeks. Rehearsed his presentation 100 times. Memorized every statistic, every metric, every piece of evidence that proved his security overhaul was working. But nothing could have prepared him for what happened when he walked into that boardroom. Victoria was there. So were the 12 board members, a mix of investors, executives, and industry experts who controlled the fate of a $2 billion company. And sitting at the end of the table, smiling that dead smile, was Arthur Christensen. Marcus stopped in the doorway. "Mr. Webb," Victoria said, "please come in. We're ready to begin." Marcus walked to his seat, never taking his eyes off Christensen. "I don't believe we've met," Victoria continued, following his gaze. "This is Arthur Christensen. He represents Meridian Capital, one of our largest institutional investors. He asked to attend today's presentation." "We've met," Marcus said quietly. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "You have—" It was brief. Marcus sat down. "And not particularly pleasant." Christiansen's smile didn't waver. "Mr. Webb and I had a conversation about opportunity. He wasn't interested, but I'm here today with an open mind. I'm very curious to see what he's accomplished." There was something in his voice, something threatening, that made Marcus's stomach tighten. "Let's begin," Victoria said. "Marcus, the floor is yours." Marcus stood up, walked to the front of the room, turned on his presentation. For the next 45 minutes, he laid out everything his team had accomplished. The new security architecture, the improved response times, the vulnerabilities they'd patched, the systems they'd built from the ground up. He showed them numbers, charts, comparisons, before and after. And by the time he finished, even the most skeptical board members were nodding. "Questions?" Marcus asked. Christiansen raised his hand. "I have a few." Of course he did. "Mr. Webb, these numbers are impressive, but I'm wondering about the methodology. How can we be sure these improvements will hold up under a real-world attack? After all, it's easy to test in controlled conditions. Reality is messier." "We've run extensive penetration testing," Marcus said. "Red team exercises, stress tests, everything we could think of. But no actual attacks." "No, because we've been successful at preventing them." Christensen smiled. "So you claim. But without evidence of a real attack being stopped, how do we know your systems actually work? You might just be lucky." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "Security isn't about luck, Mr. Christensen. It's about preparation, about building systems that are resilient enough to handle whatever comes at them. We've done that." "Have you?" Christensen leaned forward. "Because I've been doing some research of my own, and I've found some concerning information." He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "According to my sources, there are still significant vulnerabilities in Nexus Digital's infrastructure. Vulnerabilities that Mr. Webb has either missed or deliberately ignored." Victoria picked up the folder and started reading. Her face went pale. "Where did you get this?" "That's not important. What's important is whether it's accurate." Victoria looked at Marcus. Her expression was unreadable. Marcus, is this true? Marcus walked over and took the folder. He scanned the documents inside. His heart sank. The information was detailed, technical, specific. It outlined 3 vulnerabilities in systems his team hadn't finished securing yet, systems that were scheduled for the final phase of the overhaul. Someone had leaked this. Someone inside his team. These are real issues, Marcus said slowly. But they're not being ignored. They're part of our Phase 3 implementation, which is scheduled to begin next week. So they're not fixed, Christensen said. Not yet. So your company is still vulnerable. Every company is vulnerable. Security is an ongoing process, not a destination. Christensen spread his hands. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I think the evidence is clear. Mr. Webb has done impressive work, but his job is not complete. And until it is Nexus Digital, remains at risk. I move that we delay approval of his infrastructure plan until these remaining vulnerabilities are addressed. That could take months, Marcus said. Then it takes months. I'd rather be safe than sorry. The room was silent. Board members exchanged glances. Victoria was still looking at the folder, her expression troubled. Victoria, Marcus said, you know this is sabotage. Someone leaked this information specifically to undermine me. That's a serious accusation, Christensen said smoothly. Do you have proof? I know who you are. I know what you offered me. And I know you're doing this because I turned you down. I have no idea what you're talking about. Marcus turned to the board. 10 days ago, this man approached me outside my apartment. He offered me $5 million to sell confidential information about our security infrastructure. I refused. And now he's here using stolen intelligence to destroy everything we've built. The room erupted. Board members started talking over each other. Christensen was shouting denials. Victoria was calling for order. And Marcus just stood there watching it all fall apart. Enough! Victoria's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone went silent. She stood up slowly, her eyes locked on Christensen. Mr. Christensen, is what Marcus saying true? Of course not. It's the desperate accusation of a man who knows he's failed. Then you won't mind if we check the security footage from Marcus's apartment building, from 10 days ago. Christensen's smile flickered. That would be an invasion of privacy. No, that would be due diligence. Victoria turned to her assistant. Get me the footage, now. This is ridiculous, Christensen said, but his voice had lost its smoothness. I'm not going to sit here and be interrogated like a criminal. Then leave. But know this, if what Marcus says is true, I will destroy you. I will use every resource this company has to ensure you never work in this industry again. And I will do it with pleasure. Christensen stared at her for a long moment. Then he stood up. You're making a mistake, both of you. I've heard that before, Marcus said. From people who turned out to be wrong. Christensen walked out without another word. The door closed behind him. Victoria turned to the board. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. I think it's clear that there are forces working against this company, and against Marcus Webb, that go beyond normal business competition. I ask that you table the vote on the infrastructure plan until we can investigate what just happened. In the meantime, I want to assure you that I have complete confidence in Marcus and his team. She looked at him. Complete confidence. The board members nodded, started gathering their things. Marcus stood frozen still, processing what had just happened. Victoria walked over to him. Are you okay? I don't know. You did the right thing, refusing his money, telling the truth just now. Did I? I might have just destroyed everything. No, Victoria shook her head. You just proved that you're exactly the person I thought you were. Incorruptible. Even when it costs you. Marcus looked at her. What happens now? Now we find out who leaked that information. And we finish what we started. She put her hand on his shoulder. You have 10 days. Can you do it? Marcus thought about Daniel, about the promise he'd made. I'll do it in 5. The leak came from Kevin Park. Marcus didn't want to believe it. Kevin had been his strongest ally, his most trusted team member, the person he'd relied on more than anyone else over the past 3 months. But the evidence was undeniable. Jennifer Chen found it. A trail of encrypted messages between Kevin and an outside contact. Payments deposited into an offshore account. Everything Christensen needed to sabotage the board meeting. Marcus called Kevin into his office at midnight. Kevin walked in smiling, unaware of what was coming. Hey, Marcus. Jennifer said you wanted to see me. What's up? Marcus didn't answer. He just turned his monitor so Kevin could see. The smile faded. That's not what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like you sold me out. It looks like you took money from people who wanted to destroy this company. It looks like everything I believed about you was a lie. Kevin was quiet for a long moment. They approached me 6 weeks ago, he finally said. Said they'd pay me $100,000 for information about our security systems. I said no at first, but then... Then what? My mom. She has Alzheimer's, the care facility she's in. It costs $8,000 a month. I was drowning. I couldn't keep up with the payments. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? That I'm broke. That I can't take care of my own mother. I have a reputation, Marcus. I have pride. Pride. Marcus laughed bitterly. Pride is what I had when I was mopping floors at this company. Pride didn't pay my son's hospital bills. Pride didn't keep a roof over our heads. He stood up and walked to the window. I trusted you, Kevin, more than anyone else on this team, and you betrayed me. I know. You could have come to me. I would have helped. Would you? Or would you have fired me for being a liability? Marcus turned to face him. Do you really think that little of me? Kevin didn't answer. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus said. You're going to resign, effective immediately. You're going to tell HR that you're leaving for personal reasons, and you're going to pray that I don't press charges. Marcus. I'm not done. You're also going to give me the name of everyone you communicated with at Meridian Capital. Every contact, every message, everything. And if I find out you've held anything back, I will make sure you never work in this industry again. Kevin stood there defeated. I'm sorry, Marcus. I really am. I know you are, but sorry doesn't undo what you did. Marcus walked back to his desk. Your mother. What's the name of her facility? Kevin blinked. What? The care facility. What's it called? Sunrise Gardens, in Maplewood. Why? Marcus wrote it down. Get out of my office. Kevin hesitated, then turned and walked to the door. Marcus. What? For what it's worth. You're a better man than I'll ever be. That's not worth much right now. Kevin nodded and left. Marcus sat alone in his office for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and made a call. Victoria, it's Marcus. I need a favor. The next morning, Marcus walked into the hospital carrying a stuffed dog. Daniel was sitting up in bed looking stronger than he had in months. When he saw his father, his face lit up. Daddy, what's that? This is a dog. His name is... Well, I thought you could name him. Daniel took the stuffed animal and studied it seriously. Rocket, he decided. His name is Rocket. Rocket, I like it. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed. Buddy, I have something to tell you. What? Dr. Ramirez says you're doing really well. So well that... She thinks you might be able to come home soon. Daniel's eyes went wide. Really, 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 really. Daniel threw his arms around his father, squeezing with all the strength in his small body. I knew it, Daddy. I knew I was going to get better. You did, buddy. You fought so hard. We both fought, you and me, like a team. Marcus held his son and let the tears come. "Yeah," he whispered. "Like a team." Bien. 5 days later, Marcus finished the security overhaul. Every vulnerability patched, every system tested, every protocol implemented. He presented his final report to the board without fanfare, without drama, just facts, figures, and evidence. They approved it unanimously. Victoria shook his hand in front of everyone. "Well done, Mr. Webb. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for proving me right." That night, Marcus drove to the hospital one last time. Dr. Ramirez met him in the hallway. "He's ready," she said. "All the paperwork is complete. You can take him home." Marcus walked into room 412. Daniel was sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, holding Gerald in one arm and Rocket in the other. "Daddy, let's go." Marcus laughed. "Don't you want to say goodbye to the nurses first?" "I already did." Nurse Sandra cried. "I told her not to be sad because I'm going to come visit her." "That's very nice of you, buddy." Daniel hopped off the bed and grabbed his father's hand. "Ready, Daddy?" Marcus looked around the room where he'd spent so many terrified nights, where he'd prayed and cried and bargained with God for one more day. "Yeah, buddy, I'm ready." They walked out together, past the nurse's station where Sandra wiped her eyes and waved, down the hallway with the faded paintings of balloons, into the elevator that had carried Marcus through so many nights of despair, and out into the sunlight. Daniel squinted and held up his hand. "Daddy, it's so bright." "That's the sun, buddy. You haven't seen it in a while." "I missed it." "Me too." They stood there for a moment, father and son, letting the warmth wash over them. Then Daniel looked up at Marcus with those big, serious eyes. "Daddy." "Yeah. Are we going to be okay now?" Marcus knelt down until he was eye level with his son. "Yeah, buddy. We're going to be okay. Better than okay." "Promise?" "Promise." Daniel smiled that radiant, beautiful, world-changing smile. "Okay, Daddy. I believe you." Marcus picked up his son, settled him on his hip, and carried him toward the car. Behind them, the hospital grew smaller with each step. Ahead of them, everything else waited. 6 months later, Marcus Webb stood in the lobby of Nexus Digital and almost didn't recognize the place. Not because it had changed, the building was exactly the same. Same glass walls, same polished floors, same reception desk where Maria still worked the morning shift. What had changed was how he felt walking through it. 6 months ago, he'd been a ghost in a security uniform, invisible to everyone who passed. Now people nodded when they saw him, said good morning, stopped him in hallways to ask questions or share ideas. He wasn't invisible anymore. "Mr. Webb." Marcus turned. Jennifer Chen was hurrying toward him, tablet in hand, looking like she hadn't slept in days. "Jennifer, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Actually, everything is very right. I just got the numbers from Q3. Our security incident rate is down 94% from last year. 94%, Marcus. That's the best performance in company history." Marcus took the tablet and looked at the data. "This is good work, Jennifer. Your work, not mine." "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Deflect. You built this team. You designed the systems. You pushed us to be better than we thought we could be. This is your win." Marcus handed back the tablet. "It's our win. All of us." Jennifer shook her head, smiling. "You're annoyingly humble, you know that. I've been called worse. Victoria wants to see you, by the way. Said to come up whenever you got in." "Did she say what about?" "Nope, but she was smiling. That's usually either very good or very bad." Marcus laughed. "Guess I'll find out." He headed for the elevator, still marveling at how different everything felt. 6 months ago, he'd have been drowning, buried under hospital bills and despair and the crushing weight of a life that had gone wrong in every possible way. Now Daniel was home, healthy, going to school again for the first time in 2 years, making friends, laughing, being a kid. And Marcus was happy. It was such a strange feeling that he sometimes didn't know what to do with it. After years of bracing for the next disaster, the next phone call, the next piece of bad news, happiness felt almost dangerous. Like if he acknowledged it too directly, it might disappear. But it didn't disappear. Every morning he woke up to Daniel bouncing on his bed asking what was for breakfast. Every evening they ate dinner together, real dinner at a real table, in a real apartment that didn't smell like mold or desperation. Every night Marcus read his son a story and tucked him in and said, "I love you," and heard, "I love you too, Daddy," in return. It wasn't perfect. Life never was. But it was good. And good was enough. The elevator doors opened on the 20th floor. Marcus walked down the hallway he now knew by heart and knocked on Victoria's door. "Come in." She was standing by the window looking out at the city. When she turned, Marcus saw that Jennifer was right. She was smiling. "Marcus, close the door." He did. "Am I in trouble?" Quite the opposite. She walked to her desk and picked up a document. "I just got off the phone with the board. They've unanimously approved your promotion." Marcus blinked. "My what?" "Promotion. Effective immediately, you are the new Chief Security Officer of Nexus Digital. Full executive authority, board seat, salary commensurate with the position." She handed him the document. "Congratulations." Marcus looked at the paper in his hands. The words swam in front of his eyes. Chief Security Officer, board seat. "Victoria, I don't know what to say." "Say yes." He shook his head. "A year ago I was checking badges at the front door. And now you're the reason this company is still standing." "Things change, Marcus. People change. You proved that better than anyone." She walked around her desk and stood in front of him. "I've watched you for the past 6 months. I've seen how you lead, how you treat people, how you handle pressure. You're not just good at your job, you're good at bringing out the best in everyone around you. That's rare, that's valuable, and that's why you deserve this." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you give me a chance that first day after everything that happened? You didn't have to offer me anything. You could have just given me a bonus and moved on. Why didn't you?" Victoria considered the question. "Honestly, because you reminded me of someone." "Who?" "Myself. 20 years ago." She walked back to the window. "When I started this company, I was nobody. A woman trying to break into an industry that didn't want her. I got laughed at in meetings, dismissed, underestimated, and I swore to myself that if I ever made it, I would never let anyone feel the way I felt." She turned to face him. "But somewhere along the way I forgot. I got so focused on success that I became the kind of person who dismisses people without a second thought, who judges by appearances, who mocks a man in front of his colleagues because she's scared and looking for someone to blame." She shook her head. "That night when you saved my company, you could have thrown it back in my face. You could have demanded an apology right there in front of everyone. But you didn't. You just walked away to be with your son. He needed me. And that's exactly my point. In your worst moment, humiliated, disrespected, surrounded by people who thought you were nothing, you didn't care about your ego. You cared about what mattered, your family, your responsibility." She paused. "That's the kind of person I want running this company. Not someone who's always right. Someone who always remembers what matters." Marcus didn't know what to say. "So," Victoria smiled, "are you going to accept the promotion or not?" Marcus looked at the document again. Chief Security Officer. A year ago he couldn't afford groceries. "Yes," he said quietly. "I accept." "Good. HR will have the paperwork ready by end of day." And Marcus. "Yeah. I'm proud of you. I know I don't say things like that very often, but I am." Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. Something that had been tight for so long he'd forgotten it was there. Thank you, Victoria. For everything. Thank yourself. You did the work. I just opened the door. They stood there for a moment. Two people who had found something unexpected in each other. Respect, trust, maybe even friendship. Then Victoria's phone rang, breaking the spell. I have to take this. Go tell your son the good news. Marcus nodded and walked to the door. Marcus. He turned. Bring Daniel to the office sometime. I'd like to meet the kid who inspired all of this. Marcus smiled. He'd like that. Nyk. That evening, Marcus picked Daniel up from school. It was something he'd dreamed about for years, seeing his son walk out of a building surrounded by other kids' backpack, bouncing, laughing about whatever kids laughed about. Daniel spotted his father's car and came running. Daddy! He yanked open the door and climbed in immediately, launching into a breathless recap of his day. We learned about dinosaurs, and Mrs. Patterson said the T-Rex had arms that were too small to scratch his nose, and everyone laughed. And then at lunch, I traded my apple for Tommy's cookies, and then at recess, I made a new friend named Sarah, and she has a dog named Biscuit. And can we get a dog? Please, please, please. Marcus laughed. Still on the dog thing, huh? I'm never giving up. I can see that. Daniel buckled his seatbelt and looked at his father. Daddy, why are you smiling like that? Like what? Like something good happened. Did something good happen? Marcus pulled out of the parking lot. Something very good happened. I got a new job today. A new job. What kind of job? A better one. A much better one. Better how? Well, it means Daddy is going to be in charge of keeping the whole company safe. And it means we're going to have more money for things we need. Daniel considered this. Does it mean we can get a dog? Marcus shook his head, laughing. Maybe, buddy, maybe. That means yes. That means maybe. Which means probably yes. You're relentless, you know that. What does relentless mean? It means you never give up. Then yes, I'm relentless. Mom said that's a good thing. Marcus felt the familiar ache in his chest at the mention of Sarah, but it was different now, less sharp, more like an echo than a wound. She was right, buddy. It is a good thing. They drove in comfortable silence for a while. Daddy. Yeah. Do you think Mom can see us? Like from heaven? Marcus thought about the question. I think the people we love never really leave us. They live in here. He touched his chest. In our hearts, in our memories, in the parts of us that they helped shape. So she can see us. I think she knows how we're doing. I think she's proud of you, of how brave you've been. Is she proud of you too? Marcus was quiet for a moment. I hope so, buddy. I really hope so. Daniel reached over and put his small hand on his father's arm. She is Daddy. I know she is. Marcus blinked back tears. How do you know? Because I talk to her sometimes. At night before I fall asleep. I tell her about my day and about school and about you, and I always feel warm after, like she's hugging me. Marcus couldn't speak. He just drove one hand on the wheel, his son's small hand on his arm, and let the tears fall silently. Daddy, are you okay? Yeah, buddy. I'm okay. I'm really okay. That weekend, Marcus took Daniel to the park. It was a beautiful day, the kind of crisp autumn afternoon that made everything look golden. Leaves crunched under their feet as they walked along the path, Daniel running ahead, and then circling back like an excited puppy. Daddy, can we get ice cream? It's like 50 degrees out. So ice cream doesn't care about temperature. That's actually a fair point. They found a vendor near the playground and got 2 cones chocolate for Daniel, vanilla for Marcus. Then they sat on a bench and watched the other families. Kids playing on swings, parents pushing strollers, dogs chasing frisbees. Normal life. The kind of life Marcus had almost forgotten existed. "Daddy." "Yeah, buddy." "Do you ever get scared anymore?" The question caught Marcus off guard. "What do you mean?" "When I was sick, you always looked scared, even when you were trying to hide it. But you don't look scared anymore. Why?" Marcus took a bite of his ice cream while he thought about his answer. "I think I learned something when you were sick about fear." "What did you learn?" "I learned that being scared is normal. Everyone gets scared, but there's a difference between being scared and letting fear stop you. The bravest thing I ever did wasn't something big or dramatic. It was just showing up every day, even when I was terrified, even when I didn't think I could keep going." Daniel nodded seriously. "Like when I had to get my shots at the hospital." "Exactly like that. You were scared, but you did it anyway. Because you were there. And you were there for me too, buddy. More than you know." Daniel leaned against his father's arm. "Daddy." "Yeah. I'm glad we're a team." Marcus put his arm around his son. "Me too, buddy. Me too." They sat there until the ice cream was gone and the shadows started getting long. "Ready to go home?" Daniel nodded, then stopped. "Daddy, look!" He was pointing at something across the park, a woman walking a golden retriever. "That's the most beautiful dog I've ever seen. It's a nice dog. It would be the perfect dog for us." "Daniel?" "I'm just saying." Marcus laughed and stood up. "Come on, relentless. Let's go home." Daniel took his hand. "You know you're going to give in eventually." "We'll see." "That means yes." They walked out of the park together, father and son, the golden afternoon light falling across their shoulders like a blessing. 3 weeks later, Marcus made a decision. He'd been thinking about it for a while, ever since his conversation with Kevin in that midnight office. The look on Kevin's face when he talked about his mother, the desperation, the shame. Marcus knew that look. He'd worn it himself for years. He called Jennifer into his office. "I need you to set something up for me." "What kind of something?" "A fund, an employee assistance fund, for people who are struggling, medical bills, family emergencies, whatever. No questions asked, complete confidentiality. I want to seed it with my first quarter bonus." Jennifer stared at him. "That's a lot of money." "I know." "Why?" Marcus thought about the question. Because someone should have done it for Kevin. Before he made a choice he couldn't take back. Because when people are drowning, they'll grab onto anything to survive, even things that hurt them. And because... He paused. "Because I remember what it feels like to be alone with a problem you can't solve. Nobody should feel that way. Not if I can help it." Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. "You know," she said finally, "when you first got here, I thought you were just some guy who got lucky. Right place, right time. I didn't think you'd last 3 months. And now I think you're the best leader I've ever worked for, and I've worked for a lot of people. Jennifer, I'm serious. The way you treat people, the way you actually care about what happens to them, it's different. Most executives talk about culture and values, but it's just words. With you, it's real." Marcus didn't know what to say. "I'll set up the fund," Jennifer continued. "And I'm going to contribute to it too. I think a lot of people will." "That's not necessary." "I know. That's why I want to do it." She headed for the door, then turned back. "Marcus." "Yeah. Thank you for being the kind of person who thinks about things like this." She left before he could respond. Marcus sat alone in his office, looking out at the city. A year ago, he couldn't have imagined any of this. A year ago, he was just trying to survive until the next morning. Now he was sitting in a corner office planning ways to help people who were going through what he went through. Life was strange, painful and beautiful and absolutely unpredictable. and maybe he was starting to realize that was okay. Christmas came faster than Marcus expected. He'd spent the past several Christmases in hospital rooms trying to make Daniel smile with dollar store decorations and vending machine candy canes. This year was different. This year, they had a real tree, a real apartment, real presents wrapped in real paper. Daniel woke Marcus up at 5 a.m. by jumping on his bed. "Daddy, it's Christmas! It's Christmas! It's Christmas!" "I noticed," Marcus groaned. "Can Christmas wait until the sun comes up?" "No." Marcus laughed and let himself be dragged into the living room. The tree was lit up, ornaments, sparkling presents piled underneath. Daniel stood in front of it, vibrating with excitement. "Can I open them? Can I please?" "One at a time, and we're going to eat breakfast first." "Daddy, that's torture." "That's parenting. Sit down." They ate pancakes, the kind with chocolate chips that looked like smiley faces, while Daniel practically bounced out of his chair. Then finally Marcus let him attack the presents. There were toys, books, games, a new tablet for school. And then at the very end, one last box. "What's this one?" Daniel asked, picking it up. "Open it and see." Daniel tore off the paper. Inside was a small dog collar, blue, with a tag that read, "Max." Daniel stared at it. Then he looked up at his father, eyes wide. "Daddy, there's a shelter about 20 minutes from here. They have a golden retriever mix named Max, who's been waiting for a home for 6 months. I put a deposit down last week. We can pick him up this afternoon." Daniel screamed. Not a word. Just a pure, joyful scream that probably woke up every neighbor in the building. Then he launched himself at Marcus and held on like he was never letting go. "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you." "You're welcome, buddy. This is the best Christmas ever." "It's up there for me too." Daniel pulled back, tears streaming down his face. "Daddy, I love you so much." "I love you too, Daniel, more than anything in this whole world." They sat there on the living room floor, surrounded by wrapping paper and joy and the simple, profound miracle of being together. Marcus thought about Sarah, about what she would say if she could see them now. He liked to think she'd be happy, that somewhere, somehow she knew they were okay, that they were finally okay. That afternoon they picked up Max. He was a big, goofy, enthusiastic dog who immediately knocked Daniel over and licked his entire face. Daniel laughed so hard he couldn't breathe. "Daddy, he loves me." "I can see that." "Can we keep him forever?" "That's kind of the plan, buddy." They brought Max home, let him explore the apartment, watched him sniff every corner and eventually collapse on the couch like he'd lived there his whole life. Daniel sat on the floor beside him, stroking his fur. "Daddy." "Yeah. Remember when I was sick and I asked you if I was going to die?" Marcus felt his chest tighten. "I remember. You said you wouldn't let that happen. You said you'd do whatever it took." "I remember that too." Daniel looked up at him. "You kept your promise." Marcus couldn't speak for a moment. "I tried, buddy. I tried so hard." "You didn't just try, you did it." Daniel smiled. "You're my hero, Daddy. You know that, right?" Marcus knelt down beside his son. "You've got it backward. You're my hero, Daniel. You fought harder than anyone I've ever known. You never gave up. You kept believing even when I couldn't. We saved each other." Marcus pulled his son into a hug. "Yeah, buddy. We saved each other." Max barked and tried to squeeze into the hug, making them both laugh. And in that moment, that perfect, ordinary, extraordinary moment, Marcus realized something. All those years of struggle, all that pain, all those nights when he thought he couldn't go on, it had all led here, to this apartment, this son, this dog, this life. Not the life he'd planned, not the life he'd imagined when he was young and certain, and thought he knew how everything would turn out. But maybe something better, a life built on loss and love and the stubborn refusal to stop trying. A life that proved against all odds that it was never too late. Never too late to start over. Never too late to be seen. Never too late to become the person you were meant to be. 1 year later, Marcus stood in front of 300 Nexus Digital employees at the company's annual meeting. Daniel was in the front row sitting next to Victoria, wearing a tiny suit that made him look like a miniature businessman. Max was at home probably destroying a couch cushion. "I was asked to give a speech today," Marcus began, "about leadership, about success, about what it takes to build something that matters." He looked out at the faces watching him. And I thought about all the corporate wisdom I could share, the strategies, the frameworks, the lessons from business school that I never actually went to. A few people laughed. But then I realized that's not what changed my life, and it's not what I want to talk about today. He paused. 3 years ago, I was working in this building as a security guard. I made $12 an hour. I couldn't afford my son's medical bills. I couldn't see any way forward. Every door I knocked on had been slammed in my face, and I had given up on the idea that things would ever get better. The room was completely silent. Then one night something happened. Something that shouldn't have mattered to someone like me. A crisis. A problem that wasn't mine to solve. And I had a choice. Stay invisible like I'd learned to be, or step forward and risk everything. He found Daniel's eyes in the crowd. I stepped forward, not because I was brave, not because I was confident, but because my son was fighting for his life and I couldn't afford to lose my job. That's the truth. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was just trying to survive. He shook his head. But here's what I learned. Sometimes surviving is enough. Sometimes just showing up, just putting one foot in front of the other when everything inside you is screaming to give up, is the most powerful thing you can do. He looked around the room. Every single person in this room has a story. Struggles you've faced. Doors that closed. Moments when you thought you couldn't keep going, and you're still here. That means something. That means you're stronger than you think. He took a breath. I don't have any magic formula for success. I don't have 5 easy steps to becoming a leader. All I have is this: don't give up. Don't let anyone make you invisible. And don't ever forget that the people who told you no don't get to write your story. You do. He looked at his son one more time. Someone very smart once told me that trying is the bravest part. He was 9 years old at the time, fighting cancer in a hospital bed. And he was right. It's not about winning. It's not about never failing. It's about getting up every single time life knocks you down and choosing to try again. He smiled. That's all I have. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being part of this team. Every single one of you matters. Don't ever forget that. The room erupted in applause. Marcus stepped away from the podium. Victoria was on her feet clapping. Jennifer Chen was wiping her eyes, and Daniel was running toward him, pushing past chairs and legs until he reached his father. Marcus caught him and lifted him up. "Daddy, that was amazing." "You think so?" "Everyone was crying. That means it was really good." Marcus laughed. "That's one way to measure it." He held his son and looked out at the crowd still applauding. 1 year ago, he had been nobody. Now, he was standing in front of hundreds of people who believed in him, who trusted him, who saw him. It was more than he'd ever imagined. It was everything. That night, Marcus sat on Daniel's bed while his son drifted off to sleep. Max was curled up at the foot of the bed, already snoring. Gerald the elephant was tucked under Daniel's arm. Rocket the stuffed dog was on the pillow beside him. "Daddy!" "Yeah, buddy. I'm glad we made it." Marcus smoothed his son's hair. "Me too, buddy. Me too. Do you think Mom knows?" Marcus thought about Sarah. Her smile. Her laugh. The way she always believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself. "I think she knows. I think she's been watching over us this whole time." "Me too." Daniel yawned. "Daddy." "Yeah. Thank you for not giving up on me." Marcus leaned down and kissed his son's forehead. "Never, buddy. Not ever. Not in a million years." Daniel smiled sleepily. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, Daniel. More than anything in this whole world." He sat there until Daniel's breathing grew slow and steady. Then he quietly stood up, walked to the door, and looked back at his son. The boy who had fought so hard. The boy who had taught him what bravery really meant. The boy who had given him a reason to keep going when everything else had fallen apart. Marcus turned off the light and walked into the living room. He stood by the window looking out at the city lights and thought about everything that had brought him here. The loss, the pain, the years of invisibility. And then the moment when everything changed. When a CEO screamed at him to fix something impossible. When he sat down at a terminal with shaking hands. When he proved in 43 seconds that genius isn't about degrees or titles or circumstances. It's about what you do when no one believes in you. It's about who you become when life strips away everything you thought defined you. Marcus Webb had been a security guard, a widower, a desperate father barely holding on. Now he was something more. Not because the world had finally recognized him, but because he had finally recognized himself. Outside the city hummed with a million stories, people struggling, fighting, hoping, giving up, starting over. Marcus knew he was just one of them. But tonight, standing in the apartment he'd earned listening to his son sleep in the next room, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Complete. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was real. The pain had been real. The fear had been real. The love that got him through that was the most real thing of all. And if his story proved anything, it was this: no one gets to decide your worth except you. No darkness lasts forever. And sometimes the man everyone underestimates turns out to be exactly the hero the world needs. Marcus smiled, turned off the lights and went to bed. Tomorrow there would be new challenges, new problems, new reasons to doubt. But tonight, he rested. Because he had earned it. Because his son was safe. Because against all odds, against every obstacle, against everyone who had ever looked at him and seen nothing, Marcus Webb had won. And nobody could ever take that away.